Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Auburn City Council study session for January 11th, 2021. We'll call this meeting to order. And now, since the governor has introduced and announced a new reopening plan, I'm going to ask Mayor Backus to read a statement regarding our virtual meeting. Mayor Backus.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor DeCoursey. Per Governor Inslee's Emergency Proclamation 20-28 and Healthy Washington Roadmap to Recovery Plan, the City of Auburn is prohibited from holding in-person meetings at this time. The location for the City Council meetings will be virtual until the Governor of Washington State authorizes local governments to conduct in-person meetings.
Thank you very much. And Sean, will you please call roll?
Deputy Mayor DeCoursey.
Here.
Councilmember Baggett.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Jayraj.
Here.
Councilmember Malenga.
Here.
Councilmember Stearns.
Here.
And Councilmember Trott-Manuel.
Here.
Thank you. Do we have any announcements, reports, or presentations this evening?
No, Chair, we do not.
Any agenda modifications?
No, Chair, where there are none.
Okay, we'll move into our items for discussion for this evening. And the first item up for discussion is ordinance number 6809 with Director Tate.
Good evening, and I'm going to turn it over to Nathaniel Gauck, Senior Planner, for tonight's presentation.
Thanks, Jeff. Good evening, council members and Mayor Backus. So the ordinance that you have before you is, to put it briefly, it's to correct an error that was done on a recent ordinance just towards the end of last year. Ordinance number 6779, which updated the zoning code to, or the zoning code for relating to zoning map and text amendments. You may remember it was pretty recent. During that process, in preparation of the final ordinance, there was a section of the code that was accidentally shown as being struck out from the code. So it's essentially it was accidentally deleted from the code. And so the code publishing, who does the city's Auburn City Code website, they brought up a question because there was a reference that wasn't circling back, and so that's when it was discovered that this section was accidentally deleted. And so essentially this ordinance is adding that section back to the city code. So I mean that's essentially it. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions for Nathaniel, Council? I'm seeing head shake no, so thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
We'll move on to ordinance number 6810 with Director Gaub.
All right, thank you and good evening. I'm going to actually turn this over to right-of-way specialist Amber Olds to go over our staff report.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor, Mayor, and council members. Give me just a second while I share my screen with you. And hopefully everybody can see my screen. As Ingrid said, I'm Amber Olds, right-of-way specialist with the Public Works Department. I'm here to discuss draft ordinance number 6810 for right-of-way vacation V2-20 for the Muckleshoot Development Corporation for proposed vacation of the alley north of Auburn Way South between Dogwood Street Southeast and First Street Southeast. The right-of-way proposed for vacation is shown in red on the map on the screen and also on page 21 of 147 of your agenda packet. The proposed vacation area was originally dedicated to the City of Auburn for alley purposes by quitclaim deed on May 20th, 1965. Muckleshoot Development Corporation has applied for the right-of-way vacation and is proposing to incorporate the area into development of adjacent parcels. City Public Works staff, along with other city departments, jurisdictions, and utility purveyors that might have an interest in this right-of-way, have reviewed the application and determined that the right-of-way is no longer necessary to meet the needs of the city and could be vacated. Staff supports vacation of the right-of-way with the following conditions. Staff recommends that an easement be reserved for Puget Sound Energy electric facilities and CenturyLink telecommunications facilities. An access easement be reserved for all properties abutting the north boundary of the right-of-way. The applicant should be required to close the first 2 driveways of the east side of Dogwood Street Southeast, north of the intersection of Auburn Way South, and construct a new driveway to Dogwood Street Southeast at the west boundary of the proposed vacated alley right-of-way. The applicant shall construct public improvements to permanently restrict existing and new driveways on Auburn Way South between Dogwood Street Southeast and First Street Southeast to right in, right out. The applicant shall construct a 7-foot tall fence on the north boundary of the proposed vacated alley right-of-way, including appropriate gates to provide accessibility to those properties abutting the right-of-way. The applicant shall construct an acoustic CMU wall and landscaping on the south boundary of the proposed vacated alley right-of-way to provide effective noise mitigation. Staff also recommends that compensation for the full appraised value of the right-of-way in the amount of $43,000 be required, as it has been right-of-way for more than 25 years and the city has incurred maintenance costs for the alley. And staff recommends that the conditions of the vacation be completed by December 31st, 2021 if the vacation is approved. Public benefit from this vacation includes a decrease in right-of-way maintenance obligation to the city. And the vacation also supports closure, restricted access, and consolidation of driveways to the applicant's project and adjacent parcels, which will improve safety and traffic operations at the intersection of Dogwood Street Southeast and Auburn Way South. A public hearing to consider the vacation application and hear public comment is currently scheduled for the January 19th, 2021 City Council meeting. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Amber, Council? Okay, we're not hearing any. Amber, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Sorry, council member, I believe we had a question from.
I'm sorry. Okay, Councilmember Trout Manuel.
Yeah, was there very many of the homeowners from that area come to you asking about how that was going to affect their property?
I did receive one phone call from one adjacent property owner once the notice board went up for the public hearing, and she also received notice in the mail, and she just asked what it was about. And so I explained to her what the project was and how it would affect her, and let her know that, you know, staff was recommending that an easement be reserved for all the adjacent properties. I also let her know that a condition of the vacation would be the requirement of the fencing to be installed and gates so that they all still have access to their properties from that alleyway.
Good, because I did have a couple of them come to my house and inquire about them, and I told them to call Ingrid if there was any questions. So that's why I just asked the question. Thank you.
Councilmember Stearns has raised his hand.
Councilmember Stearns. And Council, just a reminder, at least right now, when we're not on screen sharing, I can actually see a hand raised on your screen. So hopefully that will continue. So Councilmember Stearns, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I had a question. Did you say there was some kind of acoustic wall on, I thought you said the south end, the Auburn Way end?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Stearns. So one of the conditions is that we're requiring the applicant to build an acoustic CMU wall. It's a concrete masonry wall on the south side of the right-of-way. It's to help block the sound from the improvements or from their project. I believe they're putting in a car wash and a gas station and that sort of thing. So that CMU wall will run along, I believe, the length of the car wash in that area to help block noise.
So it's not the entire length of the right-of-way?
No, it is not.
Okay, and then that's separate from the other 6 or 7 foot wall you mentioned?
Yes, it is. The fencing, 7-foot high fencing would be on the north side and the acoustic CMU wall would be on the south side. There is a map on page, I believe it's 22 of 147 that shows the site plan and shows roughly where those improvements will be built.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
And just as a point of reference, council, that CMU wall that Amber just mentioned will be a 4-foot high wall. So it's not as tall as the 7-foot barrier fencing that'll be on the balance of the property on the north end. Okay, I don't see any other hands raised for questions. So Amber, again, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is the modification to the 2021 through 2026 Transportation Improvement Plan, and Director Gaub.
All right, and we've got James.
And we've got competition in the background.
So James, if you want to go ahead and walk through the presentation.
Thanks, Ingrid. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, City Council members. James Webb, Senior Traffic Engineer for the City Public Works Department. I am going to present to you this evening our proposed modification to the 2021 through 2026 TIP. The TIP was adopted through Resolution 5527 back in June 2020, long time ago now. This modification is proposed to add 2 new projects to the TIP and to modify one of the existing projects presented in the TIP. And the reason for this is to reflect grant funding that we've received recently for those 2 new projects which are proposed to be added. So the project to be modified is P1, the Arterial Preservation Project. And the 2 new projects to be added are P14, which is the 4th Street Southeast Pavement Preservation Project, and a high friction surface treatment safety project, which is R10. P1 is being modified to reflect a shift in funding from the program to the new grant funded project. The changes that are proposed are for 2021 for this calendar year to move $100,000 out of the program and into the project to provide City of Auburn local match funds for the design phase of the project. And then in 2022, to move just over $1 million from the program into the project to provide the city's local match for the construction phase of the project. And that's the only change proposed to the program to reflect that. Those funds are then shown with the addition of P14 to the TIP, one of the 2 new projects, which is the 4th Street Southeast Preservation Project. That project will rehabilitate the roadway between the intersection with Auburn Way South on the west end and L Street Southeast at the east end. A resolution to accept those grant funds was adopted by City Council at the January 4th meeting. The total cost for that project for transportation is just under $3 million, of which 1 3/4 is grant funding provided from TIB, and the remaining $1.16 million is the local funding that we're providing as a match to fully fund that project. The second new project, which is proposed to be added to the TIP, is R10. That is a safety project, which will add a high friction surface treatment to 6 roadway curves located throughout the city. And in your packet, you will see a map showing the location of each one of those curves. Those locations were identified through the local road safety plan, which was prepared last year. The high friction surface treatment applies it's almost like a sandpaper treatment on the approaches and around those curves. And the purpose of that is to increase the friction of the surface of the roadway, which reduces the potential for vehicles to have a crash in those locations. They're more likely to stay on the roadway, and the driver of those vehicles has a higher likelihood of maintaining control of the vehicle. This is a grant that has been awarded to us from the Washington State Department of Transportation. In 2021, they've awarded us $54,000 for the design phase of the project. and the city will be providing a $6,000 local match from the Arterial Street Fund, the 102 Fund. And then in 2022, they've awarded us $360,000 for the construction phase of the project, for which there is no local match requirement. And then a resolution for the City Council to accept those funds is scheduled to be brought before you at the January 19th council meeting, so next Tuesday. The next steps for the modification to the tip are that a public hearing and a resolution for adoption are scheduled again to be brought before you at the January 19th council meeting. And then if anybody has any questions or comments on this proposal, please ask away.
James, I have a couple quick questions for you. So on R10, I actually have not heard of the high friction surface treatment before. Do we have other areas in the city that have this treatment?
We do. The first location we installed that was coming down Lake Tapps Parkway,
okay,
where we have the ramp that takes you down to the A Street corridor. And when we did the preservation project on Lake Tapps Parkway several years ago, we added a high friction surface treatment to that off ramp and curve. We also have, and I'm not 100% sure if this has been installed or not yet, but we do have a second location on Auburn Way South as part of the Poplar Safety Curve or Poplar Curve Safety Project that either has or will be installing a high friction surface treatment there. And it looks like Ingrid, as she drives that corridor every day, can give an update on that.
That treatment is in place. So if you drove down Auburn Way South anytime in the last few weeks, you would have driven over that in the westbound direction.
Right.
And what is the life cycle of that type of treatment?
It depends on where it's been installed and what the volumes on the roadway are. For the locations that we've identified as part of this project, relative to Auburn Way South, they're definitely lower volume locations. I think the lifespan for this is probably in the region of 10 plus years.
Great. Okay. Thank you. One more quick question. I'll turn it over to Councilmember Stearns for a question on P14, the 4th Street Southeast project. Can you kind of review the cost again? I thought we were looking at a project cost of $4+ million for that.
Right. The $4+ million also includes the utility costs. So
okay,
water, sewer, and storm. What's presented in the tip is just the transportation portion of that project.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you. Councilmember Stearns.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just had a question, actually two. How expensive is it? You know, I mean, I don't know where does it come from? Who makes it? How expensive is it? And then what is the environmental impact of it?
For the high friction surface treatment? It's a two-part process. It's almost like a mini chip seal where we apply it's an epoxy treatment to the surface of the pavement. And then it's very fine, very hard wearing aggregate mineral material that's then applied to that surface. The cost is, a lot of the cost is associated with the rock that's put down. Because it's sharp and very hard wearing rock, it's very expensive material in the first place. It's also a very specific process how it's installed. And I think there are limited contractors that have the ability to do that in the local region, although it is becoming a more popular treatment. So I would assume that the ability to hire contractors to do that, it will improve in the future. As far as the environmental impact of that, I'm not certain that I personally don't know what the environmental impact of this treatment is, but I believe it would be relatively low. It's very long lasting and it's not a very complicated thing to install. So I'm not sure that there is much of an environmental impact associated with it. Some of the benefits of it would be to potentially reduce some ongoing maintenance issues to the city, where some of these locations we have guardrail and the guardrail gets damaged on a regular basis. So we expect to see some reduction in that and some cost savings from that side of things. And then from an environmental standpoint, there's possibly some benefit from less liquids being spilled from vehicles as a result of crashes. So that may be some of the benefit that may offset some of the impact of putting the treatment down in the first place.
Oh, okay. So there are crashes at these sites.
Yeah, the sites were identified based on risk factors. So there may not be a crash history at every site, but there are factors that we would consider to be a contribution to crashes at these locations.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Council? All right, James, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, next item is resolution number 5573 with Director Thomas.
Good evening. This resolution probably looks familiar to you. Just a couple of weeks ago, before Christmas, the council had adopted a resolution for the day shelter services that the Auburn Food Bank would be providing for the city. The contract that the council approved in December was for 2020 services. This resolution is for the contract to approve the 21-22 services, contract for services that the Auburn Food Bank will be providing. And the total cost for the in 2021 and 22 will be $125,000 for the Day Resource Center. So we've been working very closely with Debbie Christian at the food bank to help kind of contain costs a little bit more. So it was more affordable with our current budget for 21 and 22. And we're going to continue working with her to work on finding other partners so we can hopefully enhance the services of the day shelter moving forward.
Any questions on that resolution, Council? Okay, Jamie, we can move right into resolution 5574.
Okay, so same thing with this resolution. This is for the night shelter services that the Auburn Food Bank is providing for the city of Auburn. Again, council approved the 2020 contract in December. We're asking council to adopt the 21-22 contract now. And again, similar to the day shelter, we have capped the total cost for the annual cost for the night shelter services at $150,000, and also looking to continuing to partner with other organizations to help enhance services.
And perhaps this for the mayor, do we have any indication of a timeline of when the Auburn Food Bank may move into that center location?
I don't have an update at this point in time unless Dina perhaps has one. I know they are working on determining what tenant improvements are going to be.
That is correct, Mayor. The food bank is slowly moving forward, but with the pandemic, there are some things that have slowed down, but they're in conversations with some architecture firms and some other folks to talk about flipping that space.
Great. Councilmember Stearns.
Oh, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I had a question, but I think this was actually for the last one, which is the agreement between the city and the Auburn Food Bank.
Okay.
So in that draft agreement on at the bottom of page 6, really page 6 through 7, almost said 6 through 12, 6 through 7, it said there's prohibited discriminatory actions. And there's a list of protected classes. And I was just wondering why sex is not in there.
That was not an intentional omission.
Okay.
Yeah, we could, I think that's pretty important to oversight, though. We'll work with the attorney, the city attorney, and make sure that we do add that in there. And we'll make sure that the version that the council adopts next week includes that language. That's a good catch.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Baggett.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think most of the questions were that I had were answered about the tenant improvements over there. I noticed that the trailers are gone for the first one relative to the day shelter. But do we have to do too many tenant improvements for either one of these resolutions?
Actually, the city won't be doing any tenant improvements. The arrangement that we have with the food bank is that they would be responsible for the tenant improvements in those spaces. That being said, there's relatively very few improvements that will be made to that space. It's a pretty basic, simple setup that the Auburn Food Bank will be using.
And do either of these fees for either of these facilities, do they also include the utility services that go with those?
So they are considered a subtenant in that space, and they are responsible for the utilities in those spaces.
But they're not included in the funds that are mentioned here.
Correct. So the way that we've worded the contract is that we haven't included the utility language, but in their sublease agreement that they have, which is a separate agreement, in their sublease agreement for that space, utilities are called out.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Jamie, Council? All right, Jamie, thank you again.
Thank you.
And our last agenda item for general discussion is Resolution 5580. Back to Director Hinman.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I will go ahead and turn this over to Josh Arndt for a staff report on the resolution.
Thank you, Dana. Good evening, Council, Mayor Backus. I'm Josh Arndt, real property analyst for the city. Presenting with me tonight is Tim Mencenitas. He's the airport manager out there at the Auburn Airport. And what we're presenting is really the culmination of about a year's worth of work to attract some new private development onto the airport. Most of that work has been undertaken by Mr. Mencenitas, but this is something that really I was looking back at some of the other land leases and that resulted in private development. And the last one was done back in 2005. So it's been quite some time since we've had this type of opportunity here in front of us. So I thought what we would do is I'm gonna turn it over to Tim, and I'm gonna let him talk about the benefit that the airport can expect to realize from something like this, as well as just the region as a whole. And then once he's concluded with that, then I'm gonna go over some of the deal points that are on the term sheet that's included in your packet, and then from there we'll open it up to any questions that you have. So, Tim.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Josh stole my thunder. I was excited to report that's something we've been working. Josh, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, for having me tonight. It looks like a poor internet connection, so give me a thumbs up or something, Josh, if you can't hear me. If I'm breaking up.
You're good right now.
So some benefits that we're excited about are both at a local and regional level. First, I'm going to speak about regionally. So this proposal,
So Tim, unfortunately, you're breaking up crazy.
Developing 17 T hangars and 6 large box hangars, and those 17 T.
Tim.
Okay. Yeah, he's still breaking up.
Let me.
Tim, you're breaking up. You might want to try turning your camera off and just doing the audio. That might help. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me any better now?
Yes.
Okay, apologies. So regional benefit.
Well, Tim, you just broke up on us again.
And those hangars, we actually.
Yeah, you're still breaking up on us, Tim.
Tim, I'm sorry. I'm going to need you to call in on your phone.
Well,
Okay, I'll do that.
Well, he's doing that. I'll take a crack at it. And then when he comes back on, he can build upon what I've said. But I think from a regional level, as you may or may not be aware, Puget Sound Regional Council has conducted a rather large study looking at the general aviation in the area, and what is expected of that. And as part of that, they look at the other airports in the region, space that there is for future development, so on and so forth. And really what is being found is that there really isn't a whole lot of that type of opportunity to expand for the GA flyer, general aviation. And I guess general aviation really encompasses a wide swath. It's your weekend hobby flyer. It's your flight training types of aviation business, and even some of your larger type business. I guess really anything that is not commercial flights or parcel type delivery, that e-com, that sort of thing is kind of fits under that general aviation. So the fact that we're going to be able to hopefully bring some new product hangers to the market, I think bodes well for the region, to relieve some of the pressure that's currently found on Boeing Field or even SeaTac. I think more specifically for our airport, like I previously mentioned, we have not had this type of private development on the airport since 2005. So you've got the immediate impact that will come from the construction of the hangars themselves, the construction sales tax that will come of that. But then in addition to that, one of the rows of hangars, one of the two is they're called box hangars. And really those are built to accommodate businesses as well as kind of your larger, multi-million-dollar type of planes. And so I think we can expect to realize some long-term economic gain for the city as well by attracting some businesses that will be able to come in and occupy some of these hangars, provide jobs, so on and so forth. So I don't claim to be the expert. That was Tim's job, but
Tim is available on the phone at this time.
I'm sorry?
Tim is available on the phone.
Oh, he is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Tim, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and speak. I believe it's *9. He's raised his hand.
Well, hey, nobody likes to hear Josh talk like Josh, so I'm just going to keep talking until he interrupts me. So yeah, that was, some of the benefits that I think, we will see from a regional's perspective, from a local airport perspective, but also just, the city in general in terms of some economic benefit. So if Tim isn't back on, I'm gonna move forward into just kind of going over some of the deal points that you'll see on the term sheet there. I don't intend to go over all of them. There's a lot of information there. Happy to answer any questions on any of it at the end. But moving forward, I think the first.
Tim, are you able to speak now?
I am. Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay. And Josh, I was able to make out most of that. I think you covered everything succinctly. The big things being the box hangers equaling business and bringing a bigger economic impact to the city and the airport, and the huge demand that we're seeing across the region for hangars. Our current wait list just at Auburn is 84 people deep waiting for hangars as of today. And there's other airports around the area who have completely shut down their wait list because of demands. And I was starting to say when I was breaking up was we actually met with another airport last week who they're displacing over 124 tenants and looking to come to our airport or closer, or ideally Auburn. And so that just goes back to really reiterate the need there and the high demand. And I know, Josh, I heard you reference the PSRC council, the PSRC study, and just the need and the whole. We're taking a small step to filling, which we undoubtedly we will fill those hangars very, very quickly. So that's about it between what Josh said and I said, and I'll give it back to you, Josh, and then be available for questions.
All right, thanks, Tim. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to share my screen here real quick. Okay, can everybody see my screen? All right, so what you're looking at here is an aerial view of where the hangars are where eventually they're going to end up going. I think it's important to note that while we're looking at one single term sheet, the term sheet really encompasses two separate lease agreements. The two lease agreements will very closely mirror one another, hence, just the single term sheet. But there are some subtle differences, beginning first with the two different product types. So if we're looking at site A, I know the reason why I shared this is because this can be kind of difficult to see, but if you can follow my cursor, there's this site A, there's a yellow line that basically outlines what would roughly be the outline of the hangar. And these are the T hangars here. And these are more for your individual hobby flyers type of thing, your weekend flyers. Goes down here, site A, and roughly this is roughly 3/4 of an acre. Site B, which is the box hangars, again matches up with site A here, but goes down, provides a little bit of an apron space because, again, if you can think of businesses operating out of these, they need to be able to operate outside of what is just their interior space as well. But runs along here out to roughly this point out near out into the taxiway, down south, and then along the fence line here, and then wraps around. And this site is going to be roughly 1.5 acres in size. So moving on, each one of these leases will have a term of 30 years, which is pretty typical in land leases, particularly aviation land leases. One important note is that during the construction phase of each of these hangars, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. During the construction phase, we're not going to be charging rent. As you can imagine, these are going to be some really top of the line hangars. I believe the cost estimates for the two projects is, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say it's between $4 and $5 million of investment. So a lot of money being put out for both civil development as well as construction of the hangars. So during that time frame, we're not asking that the tenant pay rent. At the time that they get the final occupancy for each of these hangars, at that time, that's when the rent will kick in, or at a date of May 1st, 2022. So roughly a year and a half for them to get in and basically from start to finish their construction. And then at that point, the city starts collecting rent. As a side note, I will tell you that the developer has already submitted for their pre-application meeting. And if I'm not mistaken, that meeting is on the 20th. So the developer's excited. They're itching, ready to go. They're really on us, wanting to present this to council here so that we can proceed with a formal lease agreement. Once rent comes into play, then we're going to be charging that first year at 82.5 cents per square foot per year, which is equal to what a fair market value appraisal showed the market rents to be in that last year. So that first year will be slightly less than what your market rent would be. But again, this is to allow time for the tenant to get these leased up and generating a revenue, so that the city will then, the airport can then realize their revenue from that. As Tim mentioned, there's really two different product types. There's the T hangars, which was site A, and the box hangars, which were site B. Another important thing to note is that the improvements at either the expiration or the termination of either one of these leases, the improvements, the hangars themselves, the ownership of those improvements will revert to the city once that lease is through. And then I think the last and the last piece that I want to touch on, because I think it's important, is that the city, the airport, as the landlord for these leases, one of the things that we wanted to be sure to incorporate into our lease agreement with the tenant is that the city has the approval authority over any potential subtenants that would be placed in site B, which is those box hangars. Again, if we're looking at it from both an airport as well as a city economic benefit, the types of businesses that go in there are really the key cogs in being able to realize that. So by reserving the right to approve any tenant that or any subtenant that the tenant wants to put in there, I think secures that interest for both the airport and the city. So, as I mentioned, there's obviously a lot more there, but those are the key pieces that I think are important to convey to council. So, with that, I'm going to stop and open it up to any questions or comments that you all may have.
We do have questions, Josh, and I'm going to have, first of all, Councilmember J-Raj, followed by Councilmember Baggett, followed by Councilmember Trout Manuel, and followed by Councilmember Stearns, if everybody can remember their order.
Okay.
Councilmember J-Raj, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Appreciate it. Josh or Tim, either one of you, what is the capacity at this point that we're looking at as far as the box hangars are concerned?
When you say the capacity, are you
how
meaning
many
the
hangars?
size?
How many hangars are we looking at this point? Because Tim was saying that we got like 84 people waiting in line at this point. So I'm kind of curious about, do we have capacity for 84 hangars?
So I think a couple of things to note. I think when Tim's talking about the waiting list, that waiting list is for the T hangars that are currently on the airport, which those T hangars are several years old. So the condition of the rates reflected for those would be less than what a newer hangar would be. So the T hangars that are proposed to be built are going to be newer and nicer. So you couldn't say that each one of those 84 would overflow into the T hangars because everybody's got a price point at which they're willing to pay for the airplane. And then secondly, the box hangars, again, I don't know that the waiting list for what what Tim has for the existing hangars, I don't want to say that you wouldn't have any, but I don't believe many, if any, of those 84 tenants would be the type of tenant that would be placed into the box hangars. That said, Tim, again, I'm going to ask Tim to weigh in here, because I know he's had conversations with some of our existing airport commercial tenants, as well as others that he knows in the market. And the feedback as far as the need, the demand for both of these types of hangars is we feel is pretty strong. Tim, would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I completely concur. And you said it correctly, Josh. This actually, the higher end T hangars that we'll be putting in will address another market need, and actually offer, we have a wide variety of hangars, and this will add another, I guess you could say, line of business, or another option for people looking for a place to keep their aircraft.
And I guess I would add just one more thing to that as well, and that's the tenant also did their diligence with these types of hangars too. Obviously, there's a lot of expense that goes into building these, and I will tell you that this development, this group, it's really two partners. They are both seasoned developers that have been in the market for 40 years. In fact, I didn't know this, but in chatting with one of them the other day, one of them was one of the developers that developed our Fred Meyer complex there in Auburn many years ago. So these folks know what they're doing. They're not going to build something that they don't believe has a demand in the market as well.
Okay.
Can I add one thing to that to answer Councilmember J. Rose's question? There isn't enough land area for the airport to build 84 T hangars. So at this point, you're not going to be able to meet that demand with the airport land that we actually have. So we're maximizing the land that we do have to build as many hangars as we can on the south end of the airport with this development. Does that help?
Yeah, because he was also saying that there would be businesses that can operate out of the hangars. So that was what kind of spurred my question. Is there really 84 hangars? Because if we're going to let other businesses come in and operate.
So there'll be about 17, I think it is, T hangars. And Tim or Josh can correct me if I'm wrong on that. And then I believe about
that is accurate.
About 6 box hangars. And those box hangars, that's another area that the airport, that we've identified with the airport board that we need to really focus on, is growing the airport businesses to serve the tenants that are there and those that actually use the airport. So we do need more commercial space for those aviation businesses, as well as tenant space for the T hangars. So we're trying to accomplish both of those with this lease agreement.
Okay, that answers my question. I've got one more question. So when we pause the rentals for the current tenants, and once everything, when it comes back up, are they going to have to pay a higher rate, or is it the same rate that was agreed upon?
So this lease agreement, or agreements, like I said, there's really two. It's strictly just for the land. And so the land, we every 5 years we go out and we do a market analysis, which is done through an appraisal process. And so all of our land leases are tied to that particular rate. Now, the tenant, the developer in this case, they're going to be able to set their own market rents for their product. So for the T hangars as well as the box hangars. And that might and actually will be different than what the city-owned T hangars will charge for theirs. But as Tim and Ingrid mentioned, they really won't compete with one another, because there's going to be, there are different product levels, which will demand each of themselves their own rate. Does that answer your question?
Kinda. I'm not exactly sure.
Maybe I can add to that.
Okay.
And I think where the confusion is when Josh talked about suspending the lease rate, he's talking about this specific developer only for those 2 leases, not any of the existing tenants in any of the existing T hangars.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Yeah, I'm specifically talking about this particular lease with this particular, or leases with this particular developer.
Okay,
that suspension is only during the construction phase, because again, the developer is spending large amounts of money to build this product, and so we want to give them a chance to do that and put together the best possible product that they can that matches the needs of the airport as well as the region. So that's one of the ways that we can do this.
All right. Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Councilmember Baggett, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just wanted to point out, we've heard about the economic advantages here. We've heard about the revenue that might be coming into the city, which is sizable. I just wanted to point out, for those who may not have a calculator, we're looking at around $87,000 a year revenues coming into the city for the land lease. We're also looking at a good percentage of 12.84% on the tenant's taxable monthly rental payment. So there's going to be a sizable amount of revenue coming into the city, and this is going to benefit our city and help offset some of our other areas that need a little bit of work. So it's a good thing for our city, and I would encourage it. Thank you.
Councilmember Trout-Manuel, go ahead.
Yes, Josh. I didn't catch everything you said about the 82 cents. Is that for both the T hangers and the box hangers? Could you go over that again?
Yeah, so that's a good question, council member. So yes, the 82.5 cents per foot, that is because, and I think the important thing to note, and I think maybe what clarifies this, is our lease with the developer is strictly for the ground, strictly for the land. Whether or not the developer builds the hangars or not does not change our lease and what the city realizes in revenue from that developer. Okay, now I can see where the confusion is, because I did discuss the economic benefit to the city and the airport with having these hangars, but ultimately the city's lease is really just for the land, and it's the developer who's going to who really needs to build those hangars so that they can generate their revenue, which then of course makes it much easier for them to pay us based on our lease. But our lease is strictly for the land.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense, because I only caught some of what you said, and I wrote down 82.5 cents. And so thank you for clearing that out. That's for both, right? Because you were doing the land.
Okay. The rates will be, yes, that is correct.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Councilmember Stearns.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I missed the Councilmember Baggett's calculations. What were those again?
Approximately 87,000. It's more than 87,000 a year on an annual basis.
Oh, a year. So it's
plus the taxes.
What's it a month?
I mean, pardon?
87,000. So what's it a month? So like 7,500, 7,250.
Yeah,
that sound about right?
Divide by 12. Yeah.
Yeah. So the city would be getting a little bit over 7,000 a month. Am I right on that?
It's just shy of 7,300 a month.
Oh, for both hangars.
Again, for
All of
just
them.
for the land.
For the whole, for all the land,
It's for the land.
or for all the hangars?
Yeah, for the land that the hangars will be built on. That is correct.
Okay, and so then the company, they make the money by charging more than 7,300 a month.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so I just wanted to clarify what we're getting 7,300.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
And so with that, we part of the lease, and it is mentioned in here, we will have annual adjustments of based upon CPI. And then every 5 years, as is currently the case on the airport, we will do another appraisal, which will then set the new rate. So the 82.5 cents for that first year once they start paying. After that, if so long as there's a positive CPI adjustment, we will see annual increases in the revenue. And then after so many years, basically every 5 years, we conduct another appraisal, which will then determine what the current land value is for the market, which in the past, everything has always adjusted upwards. Point being is that while we're starting off at the roughly 87,000 annually, one would expect that we would see annual increases above and beyond that every year moving forward.
Right, but we don't know what those would be.
We don't.
Okay.
Hey, Josh, I got a few questions for you as well. So one statement you made was whether or not they build the hangars. Do we have any type of a guarantee or maybe a bond, performance bond that would guarantee they do build the hangars?
We don't. So what I did is so the developer, rightfully so and reasonably said, hey, while during the construction phase, we don't want to have to pay rent, but we want to wait until we have occupancy to start paying. And understanding the market, that is a reasonable request. But Deputy Mayor, to your point, we need some sort of assurance that they're not going to drag their feet. And so that's where you'll notice in the term sheet that it says lease payments for each site to begin upon the earlier of the city's issuance of certificate of occupancy for that particular site, or May 1st, 2022, whichever comes first.
Gotcha. Okay, excellent.
So that's kind of what we negotiated is to be that, hey, here's what your spur is to get this moving and get those hangars built, because they're going to want to generate a revenue, have a revenue generation when it comes time for them to start writing the city checks.
Absolutely. And then you mentioned in the beginning of the term sheet, the site A and B, each will be governed by separate lease agreements. Do we have a timeline on when those leases will be executed?
Well, assuming the council is supportive of moving this forward for action next week, as soon as we have your action and hopeful approval based on these term sheets, we'll get to working on the formal lease agreement right away. I know the developer is they're ready to go. They would love to sign something yesterday. So,
very good. Okay. Right. And then also, so I would imagine once these hangars are built, that the developer or their agent, they are going to be responsible for the long-term maintenance of the hangars.
That's correct.
Okay. And then it mentions here for Site A and Site B that Site A will have a restroom constructed, and Site B has the stub outs for a restroom. Is that because they'll be placed in the future mezzanine area, or do we know why those are stub outs only?
So I'm going to speak to the box hangers for the box hangers, which are the ones that were discussed as having the stub outs. And so really what we wanted to do from the city's perspective is we wanted to get to that vanilla shell, which is common for commercial leases. The tenant or the subtenant, in this case, the business, will come in, and then they're going to be, depending on what their sub-agreement looks like, but figure they're going to be responsible for doing those tenant improvements to that space based on their needs. Similar to what we were talking about before with the food bank at the resource center.
Mhm.
It becomes very expensive and problematic to plumb those stub outs for the restroom facilities after the construction, after the hangar itself is already built. So long as we can have the stub outs there, the business can come in and they might have a different placement or whatever the interior tenant improvement looks like. It's not nearly as big or an expensive of a project to move that to fit their needs as it is to try to plumb for a restroom facility without the infrastructure already there.
All right, gotcha. One last question for me, and then I'll turn it over to Councilmember Stearns. So by chance, if the developer does not construct the hangars, is there a alternative plan in place of who does and when that would take place?
We don't. Like I said, our lease is really only for the land itself, and
Right.
and we tried to put in safety measures that would strongly encourage the developer to construct the hangars and get them up and get them operational. But really, in its basic form, what it comes down to is our agreement with the developer is for the land. So
Gotcha.
So Josh, correct me if I'm wrong though, if they don't meet the requirements for developing by the certain deadlines, then the city can terminate the ground lease and do a lease with somebody else for that ground. So it gives us the ability to terminate before the end of the 30 years.
We could, is so long as we've worded it. I mean, you got to kind of be careful about how you word it, but yes, we can word it as such to where that would be cause for default and subsequent termination.
Very good. Gotcha. All right, Councilmember Stearns.
Yeah, I had a question about the hangars once they're built. Is there a tax issue there? I mean, are those big buildings taxed at all?
At the county level? So I think, yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna take a crack. I'll state what I believe, and then Ingrid or Tim or some
Jamie is on the call. Maybe Jamie would like to address that.
So anytime you're leasing government.
Josh.
Yes.
Jamie, our finance director, is on the call. Let's let her address the taxability issue, please.
Okay.
Jamie, are you there? I know she's, I see her name, perhaps she's off on something else at the moment. But that is municipal property that will be on.
So we'll still own the buildings? No, we won't own the buildings.
We have the property that we are leasing to the company.
Right, but the buildings are an improvement on the property. Well, we can, yeah, I don't need an answer now, I guess, but at some point, I'm just curious to see if there is a tax. There may not be.
I can speak to that a little bit, and then Jamie could back me up. But my past experience at airports is the leasee would pay the tax on those improvements.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Council, any other questions for Josh or Ingrid or Tim? right, so council, do we have a consensus to bring this forward to council next Tuesday? I'm looking at some heads nodding and some thumbs up, and I would think we should go, Josh, to next Tuesday and bring it forward.
All right.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
the presentation. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Okay. We will now move into our special focus area discussion items for municipal services. And I will turn this portion of the meeting over to Councilmember J. Raj.
Councilmember J. Raj, you're muted.
You're muted, James.
So I am going to turn it over to Candace Martinson.
Thank you, Councilmember J. Raj. I'm Candace Martinson, Director of Human Resources and Risk Management for the City of Auburn. I am here tonight in conjunction with our City Attorney, Kendra Como, as well as our Senior City Staff Attorney, Harry Boucher, to present the King County District Court ILA changes for you to review. So I've included in your packet a quick summary of the history of the King County District Court contract with the City of Auburn. So I'll go ahead and touch on that history a little bit briefly, and then I'll get into the changes in the proposed King County District Court interlocal agreement that we will be asking you to take action on shortly at the next council meeting. So the King County District Court contract, we have been in contract with King County District Court since November 1st, 2012, and they have provided adjudication of infractions and misdemeanors committed within Auburn through that agreement, that interlocal agreement. King County District Court provides court services for the City of Auburn at the City of Auburn Courthouse, and the current contract expires December 31st, 2021. So King County District Court contracts with 12 cities, and so all 12 cities in the next month are going to be bringing forward this proposed interlocal agreement for approval, review and approval by all of the contracted city council to take action. So the proposed interlocal agreement termination date is December 31st, 2034. Since that termination must align with a judicial election year. So a little bit of a background on King County District Court and providing district court services for municipalities. So of the cases filed annually with King County District Court, approximately 40 of those filings are the results of service contracts with cities. The remaining 60% of the filings are King County's exclusive responsibility. So the cities that currently contract for King County District Court services are Auburn, Beaux Arts, Bellevue, Burien, Carnation, Covington, Duval, Kenmore, Redmond, Sammamish, Shoreline, and Skykomish. The district court currently holds court and provides public access at 10 facilities located throughout King County, including Auburn, Bellevue, Burien, Issaquah, King County Courthouse, King County Jail, Redmond, Malang Regional Justice Center, Shoreline, and Vashon Island. So in the development of the King County District Court services model, it is a full recovery model. So basically the costs of all of the types of offenses have a judicial and clerical weighting attached to them. And so we have the Auburn Courthouse is staffed with 2 judges, depending on caseloads. So in 2019, the last year for which we have complete records and was not impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, the city's caseload at Auburn Court included 4,302 traffic infractions, 109 non-traffic infractions, 200 driving under the influence and physical control offenses, 793 traffic misdemeanors, 2,075 non-traffic misdemeanors, and 3,697 parking infractions for a total of 11,176 cases. So if you have any questions on any of the history or the current interlocal agreement that was provided in the attachments, so I can take a pause if there are any questions before we move into the proposed ILA and the changes.
Any questions from the council?
Not seeing any questions. I'm sorry. Go ahead, James. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Is there any questions from the council? No. Go ahead, Director Martinson.
Councilmember Stearns has raised his hand.
Oh.
I was late. I apologize. I just wanted to clarify. So the ILA that we would sign, it's the same that all the other cities are signing, right? Same exact one?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
If there's no other questions, Director Martinson, you can carry on.
Okay, thank you. So the third 5-year term of the current contract expires on December 31st, 2021. So the contract that the cities negotiated, so the proposed interlocal agreement, we are bringing that forward to each city council and for a recommendation for approval approximately 12 months before the new city contract would begin. This is important due to the cost model implications of any city deciding not to go forward, since the cost model spreads fixed costs across the contracted cities and King County. So there, as far as the updates, so there were updates to the contract terms of the proposed ILA. And so the term and termination is or has been aligned with the judicial election years as required by Washington state law. So termination notice has been moved to 23 months prior to an effective date of a contract extension to allow contract cities to adjust budgets or plan for an alternative provision of a municipal court, the municipal court services. So in the proposed ILA, the first term is for 5 years, and there'll be the option for 2 4-year automatic extensions. And then under provisions that affect services and decision-making in the proposed ILA. So the new ILA defines district court services as including all local court services imposed by Washington state statute, court rule, and individual city ordinance and other regulations. So while general rule or GR 29 requires that ultimate decision-making authority regarding the management and administration of the district court remain with the presiding judge, this section of the agreement outlines what decisions are to be made in consultation with the contract cities, as well as what decisions GR 29 does not cover, and how those decisions would be made with or by the contract cities. So issues covered in that section would include, among others, case management, processing and management, customer service, probation services, regular court calendars, and judicial services. So when we talk about some of those services, we have 2 oversight committees. So the agreement continues the use of 2 existing oversight committees. So the first one is the District Court Management Review Committee. So we call that the DCMRC. And then the Court Facility Management Review Committee, the CFMRC. So the DCMRC is the group that does the annual reconciliation of the amount of cases and the invoice that we will receive for that. So that is myself. I manage the actual provisions of the court contract and resolution of the reconciliation that's done every year where we receive our invoice. In addition to that, if we have any court operational issues that raise up to a system-wide level, then we bring those forward and try and work through those issues as well. That Court Facility Management Review Committee, that's really the local court operations. So that's typically attended by the judges and the court staff at the Auburn facility. Sometimes the presiding judge for King County District Court is also present there. We also have our public defenders that are present there, as well as our police department and our legal department staff. So they work through the issues at the court level from an operations perspective. So I sit in on that as a support role only in managing this contract for the city. And then the provision of the ILA that's changed is the facilities provision. So this isn't necessarily applicable to Auburn because we own our own facility, but there was quite a bit of discussion on how the costing model was developed and modified for how contract cities are charged rent for the facilities that King County owns. So that doesn't necessarily impact the city of Auburn. For revenue and filing fees, so the changes to this section outlines how and when filing fees are established, the annual reconciliation process undertaken by Dcmrc, which does the reconciliation, how the city may use its local court revenue to pay for district court services, as well as other revenue and filing fee issues. The next change was to the one-time cost for district court technology and system improvement projects. So all of the contract cities pay a portion of amount of money that goes into a fund to help offset our portion, that 40% of court technology improvements. So in 2019, the IT costs that were charged to the city of Auburn were $19,455. And then dispute resolution. So there was a provision changed in the interlocal agreement that if an issue is unable to be resolved by the parties, this section outlines the various dispute resolution processes that may be followed, including using the Dcmrc committee, non-binding mediation, or invoking the termination provision of the agreement. So the city waives and releases any right to invoke binding arbitration related to this agreement. And so a lot of the discussion about that was that we have the termination provision and a lot of layers in between if we have a concern or an issue that we would use. And then ultimately, if we were not pleased with the court services, that we could move forward to terminating the contract at that point. So the city would waive the right to invoke binding arbitration related to this agreement. Court services provided by King County District Court are billed based on usage. So for 2019, the city was billed $1,684,129. We typically reconcile for the following year in June of the previous year, reconciliation June of the following year. So we will reconcile 2020 in June of 2021. And so it is the recommendation of staff that council authorize the mayor to execute the continuation of the interlocal agreement, King County District Court for provision of municipal court services. And that's all I have for presentation. Are there any questions?
Any questions, council? If not, oh, you do? Councilmember Chop Manuel?
I raised my hand, but I don't know if it went through. When are we going to be starting our court? Do you have a date picked? And
I'm assuming that you're referencing our community court?
Yes, community court.
So unfortunately, the pandemic has delayed some provisions of the community court starting. We have started formulating and meeting with the various stakeholders in the city and the therapeutic courts manager, Callista Wellbaum. And so our original plan was to go live sometime towards the end of first quarter of 2021. Kent Hay and Callista Wellbaum had worked together very closely at the City of Redmond, who also contracts with King County District Court for municipal court services. And so I believe that they are beginning the resource center that's going to provide resources to not only participants of the community court eventually, but then the general community as well. So I believe that they are starting that this month, but there's just been some logistics on holding a virtual resource center. So they're working out those bugs right now, but hopefully there'll be more to report soon on an actual go live date.
Good. I realize that we're not, active right now due to the COVID, but I was just wondering if, where are we at on starting the resource facility, and also if there's a date when, even like you mentioned, of having a virtual court, if there's a possibility of doing that. So thank you for answering my question.
Oh, anyone else? I don't see a hand raised. Going once, twice, and 3 times. Deputy Mayor, it's up to you now.
Thank you, James. And I like your finishing with the auctioneer style. Okay. All right. Do we have any other discussion items this evening, Council? Okay, I don't see anything. And any new business to cover? I don't see anything there either. So everybody, thank you very much for your participation. To all of our presenters, to all staff, the City Council. And with that, we are adjourned. Have a good evening, everybody.